In the past 10 years, electric car sales have climbed exponentially. In the United States alone, we surpassed 1 million EVs sold in 2024 alone. Motorcycles, however, not so much. Sure, in Asia and Europe, electric scooters have taken off, but when it comes to actual full-size motorcycles, especially here in the States, there's little interest. Why is that? Motorcycles would, in theory, take less time to charge and take less energy to move around, so you'd think that motorcycles would be the perfect market for an EV. Well, regardless of what we think, it absolutely flopped, and here's why. When most people think of a counterargument to EVs, they think of price, range, and charge time. All three of these are very reasonable metrics to use when predicting the success of something like an EV. But it isn't the whole story. And to get an idea of the whole story, we need to look at an electric motorcycle. Or two. This is the Kawasaki Ninja E1. And it looks alright, but when you dive under the plastics, it's pretty clear why this was never going to work well. Out the door, you're going to be around $9,000 or more depending on where you live. For reference, a Ninja 500 would be almost $7,000 out the door in most places. Okay, so apples to oranges, right? They look similar, but they're two entirely different machines. What do you actually get for about $9,000 with the E1? Well, you get about nothing. Okay. First off, and don't cheat, type in the comments right now what you guess the range on this thing is. It's a motorcycle, right? It doesn't need a ton of energy to move, so surely it can't be that 41 miles. Yeah, 41 miles in road mode without e-boost. Holy shit. Alright, whatever. Powerful motorcycles use a lot of gas, so surely EVs won't be much different. Only 40 miles, but instant torque. I'm sure this thing is lively. What is the top speed? Cowie? It's fast, right? 65? With e-boost? That's literally less than a Grom. And it takes like 4 hours to charge. And I attended Kawasaki training in person when these first came out and remember hearing these figures and my jaw dropped knowing that our dealer was never going to sell one of these things. Who's this bike for? I'll tell you who it's for, and this is not a joke because we went over this in the Kawasaki training. It is mainly aimed at city commuters, which makes absolutely perfect sense. If you live 10 miles from work, then the range doesn't matter. If you aren't going on long rides, the charging time doesn't matter. And if you're in the city, you're unlikely to go over 65 at any point. This isn't a bad motorcycle, but it is a bad idea. It's essentially trying to make a full-size motorcycle take on the job of a scooter, but it's heavier, more expensive, still requires chain maintenance for some reason, and has no real storage space. Also, making a bike for a certain demographic is fine, but what sucks is that Kawasaki pushed this bike on dealerships that didn't cater to that demographic, like ours. So it sat there for like 2 years. Also, this is not at all bashing Cowie. They're amazing people and they make legitimately good quality machines. This was a trend and they weren't the only ones that wasted time on it. Someone I absolutely did not foresee wasting time on an electric motorcycle was the company that specifically caters to Gen X, aka Harley Davidson. So let's look at the Livewire. Surely that one is a good replacement for a regular motorcycle. Also, if you didn't know, like I didn't, Harley dropped the Livewire off at the door of a fire station, and Livewire is their own thing now, so the specs I'm getting are coming straight from Livewire's website. Specifically, I will be looking at the Livewire 1. Starting off strong, we get 3 color options, unlike the Kawasaki's none, but there isn't much good news after that. Starting at the small sum of $14,000. The Livewire 1 offers 100 claimed horsepower, which actually isn't bad. What is bad is that apparently Harley-Davidson has the patent on 110 mile an hour top speeds and the Livewire is no exception. That's right, for 14 grand before tax, you too can barely keep up with a Ninja 400. One thing I will say is a vast improvement is the 0 to 60 on this bad boy. The 0 to 60 on the Livewire is 3 seconds flat, which is not slow. For reference, my 2003 CBR 1100 has a timed 0 to 60 of about 2.7 seconds, and it has a lot of ideal characteristics for straight line acceleration that the Livewire doesn't. Unfortunately, as nice as that is, your range is still at best 150 miles, which isn't actually terrible, however that is the city. And what you have to remember about EVs is that they don't idle and waste gas, so highway miles are actually less efficient for EVs. Meaning at 55 miles an hour, this thing gets just over 100 miles, with a claimed 95 miles of combined range. Now, there is a silver lining because they do claim you can get a 60-minute 0 to 100% charge with their DC fast charge, but I'd venture to say that a vast majority of people will not have that capability and will likely see their 6 to 11 hour claimed charge times, which means unless your road trip is 50 miles there and 50 miles back, you better have a generator on your pillion. Also, one other small thing to point out, this thing weighs a whole 560 pounds. That's actually more than the Blackbird, which is a sport tourer. Now, I haven't ridden one of these things. Maybe the weight is really down low, although I kind of doubt it judging by the picture. But I won't judge the handling when I haven't experienced it, but I would imagine that it's pretty deceptively heavy to get on. So we've gone over to electric motorcycles, and of course there's plenty more out there, some improving every day. But everything I just said, forget it. The range, the cost, charge times, etc., throw it out entirely because none of it matters as much as us. The reason EV motorcycles aren't taking off is because motorcyclists are a unique and very finicky market. Motorcycle riders that don't own scooters tend to have these machines because they're fun, cool, and they provide a certain experience. Don't get me wrong, I commute with mine, as do loads of people, but most of those people also have cars, and they take their motorcycle as a choice, not a necessity. I'm not saying nobody likes the feeling of EVs. I've ridden some electric dirt bikes, and they are definitely fun to ride, but they aren't necessarily what I'm looking for. Take my RC51, for example. I don't have this thing because I need to go to work. I have it because it's a street-legal race bike that sounds wicked. An EV has its uses, and I'll never judge someone for owning one or enjoying it, but a vast majority of us like our inefficient, gas-guzzling motorcycles because to us there is a charm that an electric motorcycle just could never copy. E-bikes, e-scooters, and so on are super useful and super fun. If you hate on EVs and refuse to even look at them, you are really missing out because they do absolutely have their place. If I were to own one, it would probably be an e-bike for riding to the safety meeting at the track or going around the swap meet. And honestly, riding to the bathrooms at Barber at 11 p.m. without waking anyone up sounds really nice. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you made it this far, a like is very much appreciated. And if you want to see more slightly opinionated motorcycle content, reviews, garage shenanigans, and more, then a subscription helps us both, as it's free and it takes 1 second. YouTube thinks you'll like these videos on screen, so feel free to check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching, rubber side down, and I'll see you next time.